Adam Murray is both insightful and incisive. He connects legal theory with real-world impact. Coming to you from Beverly Hills, California, it's time for This Week in Law. I'm Neville Johnson, and I am pleased to have with us as our guest today, Adam Murray, who is the CEO of the Inner City Law Center. What is the Inner City Law Center?
Well, first, Neville, let me say thank you for having me, for highlighting our work. Inner City Law Center is an amazing place, and I think to really understand it, probably the best way is to understand where we came from. An amazing woman, amazing lawyer by the name of Nancy Minty, graduated from law school at UCLA in 1980, and she moved to the Catholic Worker Soup Kitchen in the Skid Row neighborhood of Los Angeles, what we call the hippie kitchen. And she lived there at the hippie kitchen, drew in a number of other lawyers to work with her, and started serving people in the neighborhood. She worked with people who were on the streets, who were trying to figure out a way into housing and a pathway back into housing. And she worked with a lot of families who were living in the SRO hotels, the single room occupancy hotels in the neighborhood, dealing with eviction issues, dealing with habitability issues, the challenges they were facing to remain housed. So if you fast forward now, 45, 46 years later, Inner City Law Center is basically doing the same work that Nancy was doing when she started. We represent folks who are either on the streets or really precariously housed and trying to hold on to their housing. We help them connect with public benefits. We help them navigate their housing issues. And basically our goal is to work with our clients to figure out what is a pathway into housing or what is a pathway for them to maintain housing as they move forward.
Tell me about the staffing.
So one of the joys for me of Inner City Law Center, I've been there 18 years now, is the people I get to work with. It's an incredible set of folks who really are deeply, deeply committed to serving our clients. We have today about just over 150 staff. A little over 80 of them are attorneys. Day in and day out, working with extremely low-income folks. 48% of our clients last year came to us with household incomes annually of under $10,000 a year. So extremely low-income folks who are really struggling, either already living in their car, living in the shelter, or really in fear that that's where their family's going to end up if they don't get some assistance. And the amazing staff step up day in and day out and really work miracles for those clients to keep them housed or to find pathways to housing.
How many lawyers are there?
82.
Some statistics. Last year you had 3,449 cases, legal matters, 2,900 clients, and across the board, Latino, Black, White, et cetera. And you did 830 eviction cases. Tell me about those cases.
So, as I mentioned already, everything we do is housing and homelessness focused, and sort of through that lens is the way we see our work. And so what we do for a lot of our housed clients is try to figure out how they can stay housed. And if they're facing an eviction, we will help them navigate that. So there's around ballpark 60,000 evictions filed in LA County each year.
Whoa.
So it's a huge number. And as you mentioned, last year we represented 830 families who were facing eviction. We managed to stop the eviction in 58% of those cases. And at the end of that case, that family is still remaining in their homes, despite the fact that without a lawyer, literally 100% of them would be evicted. There was a study that Gary Blasey out of UCLA did a few years ago. He tracked, there was about 120 or so folks through the eviction process who were unrepresented, and 100% of them.
How were you able to stop the evictions if they haven't paid their rent, or is that the usual reason?
Well, we see a whole host of reasons. First of all, we often see folks who want who have tenants who are in below market units, right? They're long-term rent stabilized units. And so a new owner comes in, they really see, hey, if I could get this tenant out, I could raise the market rent. And so they go through all sorts of steps to try to force that tenant out. So it's not just for non-payment of rent. They could be claiming there's a nuisance. They could be claiming they want to move into the unit, a whole bunch of things. And I think people assume that usually the landlord is only filing an eviction if they have a pretty strong case. Our statistics suggest otherwise. The fact that almost 60% of the time we are stopping the eviction suggests there's a lot of eviction cases that never should have been filed in the first place. If you look at a place like New York that has instituted a right to counsel for folks who are facing eviction, they found that in the time after they instituted that right, evictions dropped in New York City by 20%. And the theory behind that is there's at least 20% of the evictions that really shouldn't be filed, just on their face. They're clearly not. And the reason they're being filed is because nobody's scrutinizing them, nobody's fighting about them, nobody's representing those tenants. That's what we step in to do.
We hear the word slum landlord what is a slum landlord and how pervasive is it, and what do you do about those kinds of entities and people?
So for Inner City Law Center, our slum housing work, what we call our habitability work, starts with usually with a tenant or a nonprofit organization reaching out to us, sometimes a city agency or a county agency, and saying, hey, we see these conditions in the building. And I'll tell you about the conditions. They're really horrendous, but we just tell you about our process first. So we have organizers who go out, they'll meet with the tenants, they'll inspect the units, they'll see what's going on. And in a lot of cases, we can resolve them without having to get to litigation. We don't have to get the lawyers involved. We write a letter. If they're not already connected to some city inspection agency or the health department for the county, will often facilitate that. And a lot of landlords just aren't paying attention. They aren't doing what they should do. And just a little attention from us sort of forces them to fix it up. But what we see in the worst buildings is landlords, slumlords who really know what they're doing. It's their business model. They've got a building that's usually an old building over 100 years old, and they're literally putting zero money into maintenance year after year, and yet they're collecting rents. So the worst thing in these buildings, from my perspective, is the conditions the kids are dealing with. We have kids, babies, who are getting cockroaches pulled out of their ears by their doctors at clinics. We have kids who are getting bitten by rats in the middle of the night. We have lead poisoning going on in these buildings. We have mold going on. My introduction to MC Law Center, I was actually at a private firm doing corporate litigation, antitrust, and intellectual property litigation. And I worked pro bono with our founder, with Nancy Minty, on a case. And in that case, a baby actually had died in the building. It was a baby who died from respiratory failure, who lived in a unit where the windows were nailed shut. There was a ton of mold, there was a ton of moisture in the building, and there was very clear medical evidence that the conditions in the building contributed to the death of that child. So it's literally killing, particularly the kids who live in these buildings. So it's absolutely horrendous. Our cases are never about liability. They are open and shut cases. The conditions are so horrible and so clearly documented that it's very clear that the landlords are doing stuff that's against the law. The cases really boil down to damages and what is the cost to the landlord of operating this way. And I'll tell you, I have 2 kids. You could not pay me enough money to put my kids in some of these conditions. So there's literally no price tag for what these families are having to go through, and yet our judicial system ultimately has to put a price on that, decide, what is this damage.
Do you force them to rehabilitate their?
We do, yes, and we have varying degrees of success on that. Sometimes we're very successful in getting the building fixed up. We really follow the lead from our clients. So if our clients are looking to stay in the building, then we're seeking to get it fixed up, and we're getting it repaired.
Well, how the question is, how pervasive, how widespread is this problem of dangerous housing, we'll call it?
So at any point in time, Inner City Law Center represents about 300 to 400 tenants in these buildings, probably about 10 to 12 cases. We could do double that easily. There's just tons of cases out there that we hear about all the time that we don't have the capacity to handle. So it's rampant.
How do you get paid?
So in general, and that's part of the reason I'm here and excited to be highlighting our work, is because we rely on the generosity of supporters. We're a nonprofit organization, but as I mentioned, we have a little over 150 staff. We also have almost 500 volunteers, and we're happy to talk about our volunteers, a lot of lawyer volunteers, but our staff gets paid, and we don't get paid a lot. Our lawyers are definitely taking a huge pay cut to come and work for us relative to what they could get in the private sector, but there's a lot of fundraising that goes on. We have some government contracts, we get some attorney's fees, but a lot of individual folks are saying, hey, this work is important, and going on our website and writing a check. One other thing I'll say that may be relevant for some of your audience, Neville, is increasingly Cypre awards are an important piece of funding for us. There's state law in California that says there's always a nexus between any state class action and the work that we do. Because class actions at their core are really about access to the courts, and our work is about access to the courts. So one of the requirements for Cypre funds, for money that's left over in class actions, is there be a nexus. There's always a nexus in state court, and so we're having a number of our attorney supporters direct Cypre money to us as well, which is very helpful.
And a lot of the big law firms have contributed as well.
That is correct. We have a board of about 35 members, I think 36 members right now. Most of them are at firms in town. We have a gala event each year. The firms buy tables. So yeah, we get a lot of support from our board and from the legal community here in Los Angeles.
The other area you're involved in is homelessness. And what can you tell us about the nature of the problem, how bad the situation is, and how the work you're doing in that area?
Yeah, so most of the work that Inner City Law Center does is focused on direct services for individual clients. So we have a client, as you've already mentioned, maybe facing eviction or maybe dealing with a slum housing issue. On the streets, it's say a veteran who's tried to access VA services and been denied. And so we'll appeal that denial. Last year, we recovered over $27 million for our clients. So we get incredible results, and we're very good at identifying who we can really help. But we also have a team. It's 3.5 folks, so 3 full-time folks and 1 part-time person. It's not somebody sitting half of themselves in a chair. But 3.5 folks who are our policy advocates, and they work on homelessness policy, on housing policy at both the city and county level and also at the state level. So we're very engaged in sort of what is going on with our homeless crisis and what should we do to change it. And I would call out for your audience, I'd call out 2 things that I would really want to lift up and for people to recognize. If we're going to change homelessness in Los Angeles, there's 2 big things we need to do differently. The first thing is that we need to have far more housing that is affordable to extremely low income folks in Los Angeles. There just are not options. The reason our clients are ending up on the streets overwhelmingly is because they can't afford the rent. There are people that are just living on the edge, barely getting by, and then something goes wrong in their life. They have an illness in the family. They lose a job. Their car breaks down. Something happens. They have some dispute with their landlord, or a new landlord comes in and wants them out. Something happens and just pushes them over the edge. But there are literally hundreds of thousands of people in that situation in Los Angeles. And the challenge is all that is happening when they are barely able to pay the rent. And if we had a lot more housing that was affordable, then people would be able to stay in their homes. So the first thing we need is a lot more affordable housing. And the second thing is we need a lot more focus on preventing homelessness before it happens. When somebody becomes homeless, everything falls apart for that individual, right? Their health deteriorates, their mental health, their physical health, addiction issues loom large if you're living on the streets. But your family network falls apart. It's very hard to hold a family together. A lot of shelters, you can't even stay together if you're a husband and wife, right? The wife takes the kids into the shelter and the husband has to go to a different shelter. There's all sorts of barriers to keeping a family together, to getting back on your feet, to getting a job. It's far better, far more humane and far more effective to intervene and to help families who are struggling to stay housed or to keep them in housing through things like the work we do around eviction, but also through other support, whether that's rental support or case management support, job training, lots of different stuff that folks need, but really a lot more intervention to prevent homelessness before it happens.
How are we going to get more housing given the cost of it?
Yeah, so cost is a huge barrier, especially in places like Los Angeles. But there's ways to deal with that. A lot of the cost in our housing is because when we build affordable housing, we don't just build affordable housing. We also want it to all be prevailing wage. We want it all to have high environmental standards. We want it all to go through a whole lot of neighborhood input and review. We want it to usually have to cobble together 6 to 10 different funding sources, each of which have a different set of requirements. There's huge costs that we put on.
Well, you're building,
So we do not build housing. Inner City Law Center does not build housing.
but you help coordinate it?
We promote policy changes at the city, county, and state level that we think will encourage housing. So we are very supportive of, for example, changing zoning requirements to allow more affordable housing. We are in favor of changing how affordable housing is funded in the state so that there's more consolidated sources and the developers don't have to deal with 10 different funders. They can just deal with 1 or 2. We're big fans of expanding things like housing choice vouchers and other vouchers that are available that make it so that when developers are thinking about whether our project pencils out, they know they've got a rental stream that's attached to the tenants that are coming in. So there's a lot of policy things that we could do to increase the amount of affordable housing.
And how do you rate the governmental agencies, city, county, state, in terms of their dealing with the homelessness issue and their effectiveness?
So generally speaking, I think not particularly highly. But I would say, I'd say it's really a political question. I think our elected officials are responsive to what people are insisting on. So for example, one of the biggest barriers to building affordable housing is every single affordable housing developer is resisted by the neighborhood where they're trying to put that affordable housing. It's true in the low-income neighborhoods. It's true in the wealthy neighborhoods. Nobody wants affordable housing in the neighborhood. They all want affordable housing, but they all want it someplace else. And so the individual elected officials are being responsive to their constituency that is saying, hey, not here. As opposed to what we need to do is we need to say, yes, affordable housing in my neighborhood, affordable housing in every neighborhood. We need to make it easier to build and quicker to build. And I need to insist that my elected officials are going to do that.
Yeah, I saw you wrote a letter to the LA Times, I think, on that particular subject saying, not in my backyard doesn't work.
Correct. I think, as I said, you talk to people, they recognize affordable housing is needed. For our clients, it's extremely low income affordable housing, right? But even just in general, like if you look at Los Angeles, people are struggling with housing. So we need a lot more housing. But we're going to have it everywhere.
And you've got a judge named David Carter on the federal court who seems to be taking an active role in trying to ameliorate the issue.
So we had a case recently. It was us, public counsel, and a number of other folks. We had pro bono counsel. It was wonderful on it. And I think you actually had him as a guest.
Yeah.
And we had a case where we sued the VA in Westwood, basically alleging that they were not providing the housing they should be providing under the law. And Judge Carter was our judge in that case. And in December of last year, his ruling from the trial was upheld by the Ninth Circuit. And so the VA is now being required to build housing.
Final question is, what's your prognosis? Is there hope that the homelessness problem can be significantly fixed?
So I'm somebody who's always hopeful by nature. I always think, hey, I see possibilities in what we could do that would make a huge difference, and that's what we're pushing for. We get amazing results for our individual clients, so the extent we can scale up and serve more clients, we definitely make a difference in their lives. But if I'm taking a look at the big picture, we're not headed in the right direction. We have huge amounts of homelessness, huge challenges with our lack of affordable housing, and we're going to have to do things differently if we're really going to want to change that.
All right, everybody, aren't we lucky to have the Inner City Law Center in our lives? And aren't we fortunate to learn about it from Mr. Murray, Adam Murray, who is really doing a great job. I want to thank all of you for watching. I want you to please like this on wherever you watch it, and I want you to stick around for the next show. Thank you.